It was a rainy Tuesday morning when Emma found the envelope. It had been slipped under her apartment door, the paper yellowed with age, the handwriting elegant yet trembling, as if written in haste. The postmark read, April 3, 1994. Her breath caught. That was 30 years ago. She tore it open, curiosity overcoming caution. Inside was a single sheet, the ink slightly faded but still readable. If you are reading this, it means the danger is still real. You must find the truth before they find you. Trust no one, not even those you love. The answers are in Havenbrook. Ask for the man with the silver watch. It was signed with just one initial, L. Emma's mind swirled. She didn't know anyone from Havenbrook, and she certainly didn't know anyone with a silver watch. Yet, there was something about the handwriting, about the way the letter was phrased, that stirred a strange familiarity in her chest. She placed the letter on her desk and stared at it, listening to the rain tapping against her window. Was this some sort of joke? Or, was it meant for her all along? That evening, unable to shake the feeling that the letter was calling her, she went to the local library. She searched old town records, news articles, anything that mentioned Havenbrook or a man with a silver watch. Most of what she found was irrelevant, until she stumbled upon an old newspaper clipping from 1995. The headline read, Local Man Missing After Mysterious Fire in Havenbrook. The article described a man named Lucas Hayes, last seen wearing, according to witnesses, a distinctive silver pocket watch. The fire had destroyed a farmhouse on the outskirts of town. No body was ever found. As she read, a shadow fell over her shoulder. Looking for ghosts, a voice asked softly. She turned to see a tall man with dark hair and warm brown eyes. He wore a long coat, and in his hand, a library book titled Unsolved Mysteries of the 20th Century. I'm Noah, he said with a gentle smile. You're looking into Havenbrook, aren't you? Emma hesitated, unsure whether to trust him. The letter's warning echoed in her mind, trust no one, not even those you love. But something in his voice was disarming. She decided to take a risk. Yes, she admitted. I got a letter. I think, it's connected to a man named Lucas Hayes. Noah's expression grew serious. Then you should be careful. Havenbrook isn't just some quiet little town. People there, they remember things differently. Some would rather the truth stayed buried. They talked for over an hour. Noah knew the roads to Havenbrook, the history of the fire, even some rumors about what might have been hidden in that farmhouse before it burned. And when he spoke, Emma noticed a certain kindness in his eyes, as though he genuinely wanted to help her. By the time they parted ways, the rain had stopped, and the city lights shimmered on the wet pavement. In her pocket, she clutched a small slip of paper Noah had given her with an address. It's the only place left standing from that night, he'd said. If you want answers, we should go there together. Emma walked home, her heart racing. She had no idea why she trusted this stranger, or why the thought of seeing him again made her feel a strange warmth in her chest. But she knew one thing for certain, whatever secrets Havenbrook held, she was about to uncover them. And somewhere deep inside, she felt the first spark of something she hadn't known in years, hope. Her hands trembled as she clutched the yellowed envelope. The paper felt fragile, almost as if it might crumble in her fingers. The faded ink carried a strange weight, like it had been waiting years for her eyes to see it. She read the last line again and again, if you're reading this, it means you're my last hope. Those words refused to leave her mind. They echoed with a quiet desperation that made her chest tighten. She didn't know this Daniel. Or at least, she didn't think she did. The next morning, she took the letter to the local library, hoping someone might recognize the handwriting. The librarian, a thin man with silver hair and sharp eyes, studied the paper carefully. For a brief second, his face froze, too quickly for most to notice, but she saw it. Where did you get this? He asked, his voice low. It was in my mailbox, she replied, her own voice barely steady. No return address. Just, this. He leaned closer, his gaze fixed on the looping script. I've seen this handwriting before. Many years ago. Her pulse quickened. Do you know who it belongs to? He hesitated, glancing toward the dim corners of the library. It belonged to a man named Daniel. He disappeared, under strange circumstances. Something inside her shifted. She pressed for more details, but the librarian simply shook his head. Some doors, he warned, are better left closed. But she couldn't leave it closed. She spent the rest of the day digging through the library's archives. The musty smell of old paper surrounded her as she flipped through boxes of newspaper clippings and town records. Finally, she found it, an article from 20 years ago. Local man presumed dead after factory fire. The man in the photograph was young, with warm eyes and a cautious smile. The article described Daniel as a dock worker, a quiet man who kept to himself, but it also mentioned something strange. He was a close friend of her late mother. Her breath caught. Why had her mother never spoken of him? That night, back in her small apartment, she spread the letter, the article, and her own childhood photos across the kitchen table. The dim light cast long shadows, making the scene feel almost staged. She picked up one old picture, her mother at the seaside, smiling. In the corner, half cut from the frame, stood a man. She hadn't noticed him before. But now, looking closer, her heart skipped. The posture, the eyes, it could be Daniel. Her phone buzzed suddenly, jolting her. An unknown number. Stop digging, a cold, unfamiliar voice warned. You have no idea what you're getting into. Before she could respond, the line went dead. For several minutes she just sat there, staring at the phone in her hand. Fear coiled inside her, but beneath it was something stronger, determination. If someone was trying to scare her away, then whatever truth hid behind that letter was more important than she had imagined. She leaned back, exhaling slowly. The letter wasn't just a cry for help. It was a key. And deep down, she knew, once she turned it, there would be no going back. The next morning, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every step outside her apartment felt heavier, every shadow sharper. The warning call from the night before replayed in her head like an endless loop. She decided to visit the old dockyard mentioned in the article. The place was almost abandoned now, the air heavy with the smell of saltwater and rust. Wooden planks groaned under her weight as she walked toward the decaying warehouses. Somewhere inside one of them, she hoped, lay a piece of the truth. As she entered the largest warehouse, dust floated through the thin beams of sunlight spilling from broken windows. The silence was suffocating. In the far corner, an old bulletin board hung crookedly on the wall, covered with faded notices and shipping logs. One caught her attention, a manifest from the night of the fire. Her eyes scanned the list. Shipments of machinery, crates of supplies, and a final entry, private cargo, D.R. Her stomach tightened. D.R. Could it be Daniel's initials? A sudden creak echoed behind her. She turned sharply. A man in a dark coat was standing at the entrance, his face obscured by shadow. You shouldn't be here, he said, his voice low but steady. Who are you? She demanded, though her voice betrayed a hint of fear. He stepped forward, revealing weathered features and piercing eyes. Someone who knew Daniel, he replied. And someone who knows you're in danger. Her pulse quickened. Danger from who? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled an envelope from his coat and handed it to her. If you truly want to understand, read this. But once you do, there's no turning back. Before she could say another word, he walked away, disappearing into the fog outside the warehouse. Back at her apartment, she tore the envelope open. Inside was a single photograph, a younger Daniel holding a small child. The child's face was familiar, painfully so. She looked closer and realized why. It was her. Her hands shook as she unfolded a note tucked behind the photo. They lied to you. Your mother wasn't just my friend, she was my sister. And you're my niece. I left to protect you. But now, they know who you are. Her mind spun. Everything she thought she knew about her family was unraveling in seconds. Daniel wasn't a stranger reaching out from the past, he was blood. But who were they? And why would anyone want to harm her? She barely had time to process before her phone lit up again. Another unknown number. This time, she answered. A woman's voice, calm but cold, spoke, "If you value your life, stop looking for him. And if you don't, you'll end up just like he did." The line went dead. For a long time, she sat frozen, the photo clutched in her hands. Fear pressed against her ribs, but so did a new resolve. If Daniel was alive, and if he had risked everything to protect her, she owed it to him to find out the truth. She carefully placed the letter and photo into her bag. The game had changed. This was no longer about curiosity. This was about family, and family was worth the fight. The days after the call were a blur of paranoia. She checked over her shoulder constantly, flinched at sudden noises, and barely slept. The letter from Daniel and the photograph stayed hidden in her bag, as if the moment she left them behind, she'd lose the only tangible link to him. One night, she decided to retrace Daniel's last known steps. His last recorded address was in an old part of town, where narrow streets twisted like a maze and street lamps flickered in the fog. The building was a crumbling brick structure, its windows boarded and door locked tight. She found a way in through a side entrance, forcing the rusted latch open. The inside smelled of damp wood and dust. Furniture lay under white sheets, long forgotten. On the kitchen table, however, lay something out of place, a notebook, untouched by time. She opened it, her heart hammering. The first few pages were filled with sketches, diagrams of ships, floor plans of warehouses, and strange symbols she didn't recognize. Then, in the middle of the book, she found a list of names. Her eyes scanned the column until she froze. Her name was there. Her breath caught. Scribbled next to it was a single word, protected. Before she could turn another page, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. Heavy. Slow. Deliberate. "Daniel?" she called out without thinking. No answer. The footsteps grew louder. She quickly shoved the notebook into her bag and slipped into the shadows behind a tall cabinet. The door creaked open, and a man stepped inside. Not the one from the warehouse, this one was younger, his hair slicked back, his expression unreadable. He scanned the room, then called into a small earpiece, "She's been here." The drawers open. Her chest tightened. "They were looking for me." He turned toward the kitchen, his eyes narrowing at the sight of the missing notebook. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Without thinking, she bolted for the side exit. The man shouted, and footsteps pounded after her. She raced through the narrow streets, the fog swallowing her figure. Her lungs burned, but she didn't stop until she ducked into a crowded late-night cafe. She slid into a corner booth, trying to catch her breath. From her bag, she pulled out the notebook again. In the back pocket, she discovered a folded map with a red circle drawn around a remote coastal area. Next to it were 3 words, "The safe place." Her hands trembled as she traced the location. Was Daniel hiding there? Or was it a trap? Her phone buzzed again. This time, the text was short, "You're running out of time." She realized now there was no middle ground, either she found Daniel and uncovered the truth, or the people chasing her would make sure she never found anything at all. As she left the cafe, she noticed a reflection in the window. The man from the apartment building was standing across the street, watching her. Their eyes met for a second before he melted back into the darkness. It was no longer just about finding answers. It was about staying alive long enough to hear them. The train to the coast rattled through empty landscapes, fields giving way to marshes and jagged cliffs. She sat by the window, gripping the notebook in her lap. Every so often, she would flip to the page with her name and the word "protected" beside it, as if reading it again could somehow make her feel safer. By the time she arrived, the sky was a cold shade of gray, and the wind carried the taste of salt. The small harbor town looked deserted. Boats rocked gently in the water, their ropes creaking. She followed the map from Daniel's notebook, the narrow cobblestone streets leading her further from the populated docks toward an old lighthouse on the edge of the cliffs. The path was steep and slick with moss. She glanced behind her often, certain she wasn't alone. Once, she caught a flicker of movement near the rocks below. Someone was following, keeping just out of sight. At the lighthouse, the door hung slightly open, swaying in the wind. Inside, the air was damp and cold. Rusted machinery groaned softly, and dust floated in the beams of pale light from the cracked windows. She moved cautiously up the spiral staircase, each step groaning under her weight. Halfway up, she heard a sound, the creak of a step above her. Her heart raced. She climbed faster, hand clutching the notebook like a shield. At the top, she found a small room, its walls lined with maps and photographs pinned in chaotic clusters. Many showed the same symbol she'd seen in Daniel's sketches. In the center of the room sat a metal box with a heavy lock. She crouched beside it, running her fingers over the cold surface. On the lid was an engraving, "If you're reading this, I failed." Her breath hitched. Before she could open it, a shadow filled the doorway. She turned, and froze. It was the man who had been following her, his face half hidden beneath a hood. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low but urgent. "Who are you?" "Where's Daniel?" she demanded. He stepped closer. "Daniel sent me to protect you. But you've been too visible. They know you're here. They'll be coming." Her pulse quickened. "Why is my name in his notebook? Why does it say I'm protected?" His eyes flickered with something between pity and regret. "Because you're not just looking for him, you're part of the reason all of this started." Before she could press him for answers, the sound of engines roared from outside. Black vans pulled up at the base of the cliff, and armed figures began spilling out, moving toward the lighthouse. The man grabbed her wrist. "If you trust me, we have to go. Now." But her eyes fell back to the locked box on the floor. Something told her the truth, about Daniel, about herself, was inside. The man saw her hesitation and cursed under his breath. "You have 30 seconds before they're through that door." She knelt, trying the lock, her hands shaking. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. The man pulled a small tool from his pocket and jammed it into the lock, snapping it open. Inside was a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon, and a small flash drive. "Take them," he ordered. She stuffed them into her bag as the first shadow appeared in the doorway. "Run!" They bolted down the staircase, the shouts of their pursuers echoing in the narrow space. The lighthouse door slammed behind them as they sprinted toward the rocky path, the sea crashing violently below. She didn't know if she could trust the man leading her, but she knew one thing. The truth was now in her hands. And whoever was after it would stop at nothing to take it back. They didn't stop running until the lighthouse was a speck on the cliff behind them. The wind ripped at her coat, and the man finally slowed, pulling her into the shadow of an abandoned boathouse. "Open them," he said, nodding toward the letters in her bag. Her hands trembled as she untied the faded ribbon. The paper inside was worn, the ink smudged, but the handwriting was careful, deliberate. The first letter began simply. "If you are reading this, it means I failed to protect you in person. But I hope these words will protect you in ways I never could." It was from Daniel. Her eyes scanned the lines, each one heavier than the last. He confessed that the people she had been searching for all along weren't strangers. They were her family. Not the distant, abstract kind, but the very people entangled in the dangerous web she had stumbled into. The ones she thought were her enemies. She felt her chest tighten as she read further. He spoke of a tragedy years ago, a night of betrayal and loss, when she had been hidden away for her own safety. He'd been tasked with watching over her from the shadows, keeping her existence secret. And then came the line that made her breath catch. "I was never meant to say this, but I can't leave this world without telling you, I love you. Always have. Always will." Her vision blurred with tears. She turned to the man beside her, but his gaze was fixed on the water, as if giving her the space to process. The second letter was shorter, but colder. It warned that those chasing her weren't after money or revenge, they were after the truth in the flash drive. And that truth could either save lives, or destroy them. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" she whispered. "Because you were safer not knowing," the man replied. His voice was heavy with guilt. "But now, there's no going back." Before she could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed outside the boathouse. She quickly slipped the letters back into her bag. The man stepped forward. "Go out the back. I'll hold them off." "No," she protested. "If they catch you." He smiled faintly. "This is what I was meant to do." She hesitated only a second before bolting out the rear door, the sand crunching beneath her boots as she ran toward the docks. The roar of the sea mixed with shouts behind her. At the far end of the pier, a small fishing boat waited. An old fisherman waved her aboard. "Daniel told me to take you as far as you need," he said without question. As the boat pulled away, the coastline shrinking in the distance, she opened the flash drive on her laptop. Dozens of files appeared, names, dates, bank transfers, hidden medical records. And among them, a single video file labeled only with her name. She clicked play. Daniel's face filled the screen, pale but smiling. "If you're seeing this, it means you made it. You're stronger than you think. Don't let anyone tell you who you are, you decide that. And remember, sometimes the family we think we've lost, was right in front of us all along." She sat there, the wind tangling her hair, watching the waves stretch endlessly ahead. Somewhere out there, danger still lurked. But for the first time in years, she knew who she was. And she knew she wasn't alone. Moral: never judge someone by what you think you know. The truth can change everything.